Coming every Tuesday night in February at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live, it's the Bible is Black History Institute. This year's theme is Great Women of the Bible, Black women who shaped our biblical faith. We will study Eve, Deborah, Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, along with Vashti, Esther, and Lydia. We will study from Dr. Theron Williams' latest book, Great Women of the Bible, Contemporary Conversations. To order your copy and for more information about the Bible is Black History Institute 2021, visit our website, BibleIsBlackHistory.com. We welcome you to the Bible is Black History Institute, and now founder and president, Dr. Theron D. Williams.
God bless you. Thank you again for tuning in and sharing with us here at the Bible is Black History Institute 2021. Our theme this year is Great Women of the Bible. And it's based upon my latest book, Great Women of the Bible, Contemporary Conversations, where we deal with the great women of the Bible and how they were instrumental in helping to lay the foundation to our biblical heritage. And these women, of course, were women of color. And you'll be surprised how much women of today have in common with the great women of the Bible. If you missed last week and you didn't get a chance to tune in, you can go to our website, BibleIsBlackHistory.com, and we have that saved for you so that you can check it out. It's recorded, it's saved. We have it posted on our website. You can go and you can check it out. You're going to be blessed as a result of it. Let me say thank you to all of the people who have been on every week. You know, and I had a feeling that addressing women's issues would be a blessing. And the men are tuning in as well, and that's a good thing, because a lot of the issues that our women are facing in our society, many times they are held in place by our brothers. And so we need to be more sensitive to what sisters have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And tonight, we are looking at Judge Deborah. Judge Deborah was an awesome sister. Judge Deborah was a woman who was in charge. She is the only female judge in Israelitic history. Judge Deborah is the first prophet to execute her ministry on Israelite soil. You remember, Moses was a prophet, but Moses never came over into the promised land. Moses was able to look over and see the promised land, but he never entered. And after Joshua brought the children of Israel over into Canaan, Deborah is the very first person who is referred to as prophet. And she is the only judge and the first prophet of Israelitic history. And here is Deborah having to provide leadership in a misogynistic, sexist society. This sister has a whole lot in common with our sisters of today. And so that's the conversation that we're going to have on tonight. And our own sister Rila Mann, a great woman of God, very insightful. She loves the Lord, and she's been a part of the Mount Carmel Church for a very long time. She is going to lead the conversation here tonight. Again, you can pick up the book. You can order the book on our website, BibleIsBlackHistory.com. You can order the book. And we'll rush the book out to you because you really want to have the book to follow along with the conversations that we are having this month for our Bible is Black History Institute. Again, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for participating. Lean forward and be blessed.
All right. First off, I want to welcome you ladies and thank you for joining me today in our discussion of the great women of the Bible. And I want to thank our pastor, my pastor, Pastor Theron Williams, and the Mount Carmel Church for giving us this opportunity to discuss such a great woman. And I'm just glad that he gave us the opportunity for me to bring you great women together to have this discussion. So I am Rela Mans, and I want all of you to go ahead and introduce yourselves. And we'll start with Natalie, since you're on my left here. We'll start with Natalie and go across. So, Natalie, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Natalie Shepherd. I'm also a member of Mount Carmel Church, where Dr. Theron Williams is my pastor, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm really excited about this book, The Great Women of the Bible. And I look forward to not just reading the story that we read, but also finishing up all the stories of the women of the Bible.
Yeah. Cassandra.
I'm Cassandra Brown, and I'm also a member with Mount Carmel Church. And a shout out to my pastor, love my pastor. And I echo Natalie. I do look forward to continuing and finishing up the book also. It's an awesome book.
Angela, if you would.
I'm Angela Harris. I'm a member of the Way Church, Pastor Ricky McCrae, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity to discuss.
Yeah. And Penny.
Hi, I'm Penny Williams, and I am a member of New Beginnings Church at 20 Church Road, where the pastor is James Jackson, and I am excited about being a part of this conversation on Judge Deborah.
All right. So I have brought together an assembly of great women who are in my life. And I just appreciate all of you coming together from different churches under different tutelage for you to come together and just discuss this great woman who is Deborah, or should I say, Judge Deborah. Okay, because she was a great woman. She was a woman in charge. And so I don't want to take anything from her. I want to make sure that she has all of her props. And with that, let me just give a quick overview of the chapter and the woman of God that we're going to be talking about. So we're here to discuss one of the great women of the Bible. And in my opinion, she was one of the great women of biblical time, period. But not only of biblical time, but also of our time. Because she, to me, after reading this chapter, she was a great woman. She was a great role model, someone that I want to be like. She was a great influence. So she could, get people to do what she wanted them to do, how she wanted them to do it. So she was definitely an influence. And then she was even a woman after God's own heart. So she was a woman who was a true woman of God. So I want to be like Deborah, I think. And she was a woman in charge. So I am impressed by Deborah. I am influenced by Deborah, and I'm excited to talk about her. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And I'm going to set the stage as to the time that Deborah lived in, and that time, during that time, biblical times, women were considered less than. We didn't have, any clout. We didn't have, we were more like property, basically. And so we were there to take care of the children, take care of the home, raise our children. We couldn't even worship in the same place that the men could. We had to be out by the gates, where the men were front and center. So we were definitely considered less than. But this woman, Deborah, was able to become a judge in that time, in that condition. She was able to become a judge even though we were considered less than. So after reading this chapter, ladies, tell me some of the characteristics that might have gotten her to be a judge, that may have gotten her into her position. Talk to me about those things.
I wrote down some of the characteristics of Deborah. First and foremost, she was faithful to God's word because God wouldn't have chosen her to be a judge. She was faithful, she was just, she was smart, she was dependable, and she had integrity. And people looked up to her.
Mhm.
And like you said, for a woman in those times, that was rare because we were considered property.
Yes.
but God chose. So there was 13 judges, and she was only woman that God chose to help judge Israel at the time. So
Hmm.
she was a bad woman, and she was to be able
Yeah.
to be chosen for that. And I just look up to her and her faithfulness to God. I'm sure she was a prophetess, so she
Hmm.
knew God's word. She was able to interpret God's word, and she used that to help judge the people.
Okay. That's good. She was just and she was faithful. That's good. I'm loving Deborah even more hearing that description.
Well,
Penny or Sandy.
just building on what Natalie said, she was a visionary. She was able to set standards for the other judges who followed her. She was a proven warrior. She was qualified to provide military leadership,
Yeah.
and she was able to settle disputes.
Yep.
So she set all types of standards.
That's good. That's good.
Great
So
warrior.
a great warrior. I like that too. Because, even in today's time, we just as women got the, I guess, privilege to be able to even fight in the military. And so with her being a great warrior was a big deal. That was a big deal back in that day. So, yeah, she was a great warrior. Angela, did you have something to add to Deborah's attributes?
Pretty much summed it up.
Summed it up.
She was a
Okay.
great warrior.
Penny?
I agree with what everyone said about her. She
Hmm.
definitely had some leadership qualities, and she also, to me, she had to have some strong self-esteem to live in those times and
Yep.
be the first woman to be, chosen in this position. She had to definitely not worry about what thought of her or said of her in spite of her a woman and being put in that position. So she definitely had to have some serious self-esteem.
That is so true. And that's so important, not only for that time, Penny, but for this time, for us today. Women suffer from depression and from low self esteem and that kind of thing today. And for her to be a woman in that time and providing leadership to men. You know, and them listening to her and respecting her. That was amazing. She had to have good self esteem. She had to. That's amazing. And the thing is that back then judges were not voted on, they weren't appointed by the people, they weren't chosen by the people, they were people who showed leadership skills, who just kind of gravitated into that position, right? And so God, like you all said, the Lord chose her. He chose her. He knew what he had put down on the inside of her, and he wanted to pull that out, right? So I think that is amazing. She had some great attributes. So although Deborah held the same position as her male counterparts, she was restricted in some areas. So she was a judge. She was Judge Deborah, but she was restricted in some areas. So talk to me about a time or in your life, even that you felt that you might have been restricted as a woman in a male dominated um, industry.
Out of high school, I actually joined the Army. And joining the Army, it is totally a male dominated profession, not only male dominated, but white male dominated.
Hmm.
And so, as I rose through the ranks, I did have resistance from my soldiers under me wanting to take orders from not only a woman, but a
Hmm.
Black woman.
Yeah.
So they did not want to take orders from me. So I had to work extra hard to get the trust of the men that were under me, where men that were in the military, they could just bark out an order and the men would follow behind them and do what they said. But as for the women in the military, whenever we gave an order, it was not, I mean, it was like we had to be forceful, but then we had to be cuddling towards them also. So
Right.
we had to be both in order to get them to respect us and to follow our orders. Now, when I retired from the military, that's when we had some of the um, wars that were starting to kick off here that the military has taken part of.
Hmm.
And my soldiers at that point, they did not want me to retire. I had built the trust from to my soldiers where they were like, well, Sergeant Davis Brown, we would like for you to stay here and to lead us, but it was time for me to go. But it's a struggle, and,
Yeah.
and that struggle continues. That struggle has not stopped, and I
Yeah.
know Deborah had it, and we as women still have that struggle.
Yep. That is so
That's so
true.
true.
And the thing is that the soldiers, they gave her a hard time, and they didn't follow her lead at first, and they ended up doing what? Staying in oppression for 20 years.
Mm.
20 years because they didn't follow the leader that God had already given to them. So with that said, tell me about an opportunity where you have been put in charge of a project or something at work, a team, and you have had to go to people and say, "Hey, we're going to get this thing done," but your team is going to get credit for it, but that there might have been some resistance from someone, and you had to let that person know, "I need you, but look, you're going to be under my leadership." Talk to me about that. Anybody have that instance? Because I have.
Okay.
Well, okay. So I used to work for HP. And in working for HP, I was a supervisor of our field team. We would go out and train doctors and billers on how the Medicaid program worked. And when in doing that, let me see, I had 18 people who were under me. 7 of those people went out in the actual field. 5 of those people were men. And like Sandy said before, I had 1 black man, and the rest of them, 4 of them were white men, and they were older white men. So of course and at that point I was probably, in my early 30s. So at that point they didn't want to listen to anything that I had to say. I had to literally convince them, and then in some cases, in some instances, I had to not only convince them but just to tell them, this is what we're going to do. This is the vision that I have. This is what's going to happen with this team, and we're going to get this done. After we were victorious, because we did workshops annually, and after our workshops for the entire state, and we did those workshops well, some of those men wanted to take credit for the ideas that I came up with.
Mm.
And I had to let them know, no, sir, you don't get to take credit for something that you resisted in the first place, and you didn't want to even be under my leadership. So it's hard as a woman, we have to work extra hard. We have to push and, fight tooth and nail to get our ideas across, and then someone else wants to come in and take credit for it. And it was right for Deborah to stand up for herself and say, no, you are not going to get credit for this battle that we are getting ready to win. I am going to take my credit for the idea and the vision that God had given me. So, sometimes as women, we just have to stand up for ourselves. Do any of you guys have an issue with standing up for yourself in your workplace or even in your church as a leader?
No.
I have no problem with standing up.
No. No? Okay. Well,
No.
tell me how you can do that and still be diplomatic and still be Penny, you have your hand up. Tell me how you can do that and still be diplomatic and still be um respected in your position.
As part of my job, I'm working on a Social Security grant. So I review rep pays, and we have hired people in like Southern Indiana and Northern Indiana, all over Indiana, to do certain areas, so I don't have to travel as much, because it was only 2 of us when President Trump, I don't even like saying that, but I'm gonna say it anyway. President Trump signed the bill in office for us to do it as protection and advocacy agencies. Every state does it, each protection advocacy. So I have the job of traveling to train, and there are ladies in the South, and I found so much from people in the South because it is a racial tension. I was in Bloomington on Wednesday when the stuff broke out at the Capitol. And I was down there training a girl who was from some little town. So when it got to lunchtime, I was like, well, we get something or grab something and everything like that. And she looked at me with a funny look on her face and said, "You be careful." And I said, "No, I said, why you say that? She said, I'm just saying, be careful. I said, no, come on, we get ready to go together. And you should see her face. You know what I mean? I said, no, we're gonna go together unless you're not eating. You know what I mean? And she was like, yeah, I want something. I was like, okay, well, come on. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to be with me. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? I as your trainer, you going on my schedule. I'm not going on yours, you know. And I have to go into these places in Southern Indiana with that mindset as I come there. You know, a lot of times I come there, you know, as an American woman, you know, and they are looking at me like, oh no, you know what I mean? But I go with that mindset that, look, I got a job to do. You know what I mean? I don't care if you like the color or don't like the color of my skin, especially during the pandemic. They look at me crazy because while they talking, I'm spraying Lysol everywhere with my mask on. I tell you, I'm spraying my area down. You know what I mean? So, you know, and, you know, it's just different because sometimes you have to command respect, especially when you know, when you have a job to do, you know what I mean? And I faith over fear. Ain't nothing gonna happen to me that is not in God's design.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So I just had in mind, you know what I mean? And I believe as Christians, as women of faith, we have to have that warrior mentality. That, you know, regarding everything we do, we put God first, but we also have to know that God is with us. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna live in fear of what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go in here and do it. I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna do my job, and I'm gonna live to see another day if God's willing. So I think it's important that, you know what I mean, we have to take that stand. You know, regardless, we're not only dealing with sexism, but we're dealing with racism. And, you know, as women, we're always in a fight. You know, even in the struggles in a relationship, we're always in the fight to hold our stand and hold our ground. But we have to do that, you know what I mean, in order to live the life that God intends.
That's so true, Penny. So true. And that's one of the things that I think that I admire about Deborah is that she was a spiritual woman, and they did question her spirituality. They questioned her education. They questioned everything about her because she was a woman, simply because she was a woman. So if that was a man, they would never have questioned. And if you were a man, more than likely they would never have questioned. So, and then Sandy, you, in your instance, they would never have questioned just because you are a woman. They question. So spirituality and knowing that who God is in your life and who you are as a child of God is so important. It's so important in knowing your place. So tell me about a time when you felt, because after the battle, Deborah not only took her credit, but she also gave credit to the other women who were involved. And I like that. I really love that. And the reason I love that is because so many times, especially now, we always feel like, you know, there are women who feel like they're competing against other women. We're always set up against one another, especially as Black women. We're always set up against one another. And so Deborah said, no, I didn't do this by myself. There were other wonderful, strong, brave women who helped me to carry out God's plan. And I want to give them their credit. I want to give credit where credit is due. How do you ladies feel about being pitted against the other women, you know, other women in your lives? Does that happen to you all or no? Have you had that experience?
Yeah. I've always heard you don't want to work for a Black woman boss. And I hate it that I cringe when I hear that.
Yeah.
I'm like, why wouldn't I want to work for a Black woman boss? You know, that's what I aspire to be. So why wouldn't I want to help somebody else get to their level? She's not taking anything away from me by being the best boss she can be, and I'm going to help her do that. But people seem intimidated, and that does not intimidate me. Matter of fact, it makes me want to, it strengthens me because I know she can do it, I can do it.
Yes. God is in the blessing business. He ain't stopped blessing just because he blessed you.
Right.
Okay. So he's still blessing, got enough blessings to bless me too. Angie, what do you feel about that?
I am a bit in a business where it's predominantly male as well. I noticed that when I started the job, I came in as a receptionist. However, now I am what we call office manager because what they wanted to do is try and, you know, just keep me on the coffee. But
God had
when
other
it was
plans.
all and done, even higher up, there was a male. It was a male that was really high up, who really, I don't know if I think he just didn't like women, period. I don't know what the problem was, but I just prayed on it because I noticed how the way that he treated women. Every time a woman would speak, or he would try and shut them down, or if they tried to teach him something, it was like he was the teacher. And that kind of bothered me at first, but then I knew in my heart, hey, this job is for me. This is my job. Let me take control of my job, which I had to eventually do. And, I prayed on it, and I noticed that God started at the top, shut him all the way down. He's removed from the job. He's no longer there. I'm still there doing my job. So, sometimes as women, we can't be afraid of someone because they are higher up to, that we can't do what we're doing.
Yeah.
We have to, learn to speak up and let them know, hey, I am in control of this.
I like that. Angie said she needed to she claimed what was hers.
I
And
claimed it.
if God has already told you what is yours, then you go ahead and claim it.
Mhm.
Speak that thing into existence. So I applaud you for that. So I'm glad that you didn't allow someone else to stop you, regardless
I
to who it was. You didn't allow them to stop you.
and I mean, he was in management position, and I'm like,
Okay.
no,
Yep. Yep. Do you guys feel that women like Deborah, strong women who have opinions, who are smart and spiritual and faithful, do you feel like we are treated fairly in corporate America? Um, Even in the church as leaders, do you feel like we are treated fairly, treated the same way that men are treated?
When I first started, when I first started going to church, I noticed that it was always a man in the pulpit. It wasn't a woman. And then I started hearing things like a woman can't be in my pulpit.
Mhm.
So yes, I think that there's a problem there. I mean, I've seen lots of ministers that are women now,
Mhm.
pastors that are women now, and I applaud them. However, when I first started going to church, it was all about the man.
Yeah,
And a
I
woman's
know.
place was not in the pulpit. She was a nurse, she was an usher. She wasn't she wasn't up there preaching the word.
Right, right.
So I think we've come a long way. However, I just remember that as a child, that I remember a pastor saying,
Yeah,
a woman is not allowed in my pulpit. And I remember
yeah.
women used to go up in the stands, and they would get away from the pulpit, but they will go straight to the to where the choir was.
Hmm.
They couldn't even walk across there.
The pulpit, right.
So there are a lot of things that have changed now. So I'm noticing that it's not as sexist as it used to be.
Yeah, I agree. I know that when we were little, Angela's my cousin, so we grew up together. So when we were little, we would see that and we would hear pastors say that women do not belong in the pulpit. I'm glad that I belong to a church where my pastor does not feel that, where he feels that women have been given gifts from God and he wants to develop and help to bring out what's, on the inside of women, but not only women, everyone. He wants to make sure that you're living out your God given abilities and gifts. I remember my sister and I went to a church. One of my other sisters invited us to her church one day, and we went to the church. And some of you have heard this story, and some of you have lived this story. But we went to that church, and the pastor literally, I probably had on about as much makeup as I have on now. I had on a skirt, some high heeled shoes, just like I do when I go to church every Sunday. And that pastor literally, that pastor literally came from the pulpit and called out us, my sister and myself. He called us out and said we were Jezebels. We didn't belong even in the
Wow.
church, let alone in the pulpit. And so some pastors still, and that wasn't that long ago. This was as an adult. This was not as a child.
Right.
So some pastors still have that mentality that women should be um, experiencing church or experiencing God at the North Gate, like Deborah and the women in her time had to, or we should be in a cloth, and covered up and all of these things. Not to say that I wasn't covered up at church, but by the same token, I didn't meet his approval. It
Right.
wasn't come as you are. It was, and God will meet you where you are. It was, you are a Jezebel. Literally, those are the words he said to a young woman, two young women sitting in the congregation coming to receive the Lord. And so, with that being said, I do think that we've come a long way as far as women leadership in the church. Um, our pastor is one that is definitely one that encourages women, encourages everyone who has a gift from God. Pastor Penny, I know your pastor also. Angie, Ricky is a son of the Mount Carmel Church, so I know he has that same mentality. So we are blessed to have that kind of leadership. Everybody doesn't have that.
Right.
So yeah, we are very blessed to have that kind of leadership because sexism does definitely still exist. It
It
definitely
does.
does. And not only like we said in corporate America, but also in our churches. So it's something that we're still trying to overcome. We're going to continue to pray about that thing. So talk to me about sexism in the home.
I've seen women that were uh, they were told that's all they had to do. That's all they could do was to take care of the home, take care of the children. Wasn't allowed to work.
Right.
Um, I thank God that I was, in my situation, I am allowed to work.
Hmm.
Actually, I have a house husband. So, I'm allowed to work. He actually is retired. So thank God for that. He was able to retire. And I'm feeling good about, getting out every morning and going to work. I don't want to stay home and just, I mean, I'm an empty nester now, so I don't have to stay home and just take care of the house, take
Yeah.
care of the children. So, but when I was growing up and I saw a lot of women, my grandmother,
Yeah.
some of our family members had to just stay home. It was nothing that they knew how to do. But when husband dies, they
They,
still don't know what to do.
Exactly.
yes. That part right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when husband's gone, they have nothing to do. They have nothing to offer the next person or their next husband, but the same thing that they gave their husband, that they were with.
Previous husband. Hmm.
Mhm.
So it's
Hmm.
it's, it's kind of ugly situation, when we have to. There are a lot of single parents out here now, and they come from homes like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's a lot of teaching that the world is teaching our children when they come from single homes or homes that were uh, where the wife had to stay home
Hmm.
and the husband did all the working
Yeah.
and he wouldn't let her get out. So
Natalie, you had something?
Can I digress for a moment?
Yes.
Because this has been interesting to me. As a black female, my mom and dad had four girls. They was told, go to college, get your education, get you a good job so you'll be able to take care of yourself. Even if you get married, and then marriage doesn't work out, you'll still be able to support yourself.
Right.
And then I talked to some of my white friends. I have a lot of white friends, and theirs was like, you get to go to college, you find your husband, you get married. Then you don't have to work, or you become a teacher, or you become a nurse, and you work part time, you home with your kids. And I'm like, man, that life must have been easy for them,
Yeah.
because I see like we struggle,
Yeah.
and it's definitely a worldly view.
Hmm.
It is. It's not the godly marriage that God intended, but it is a worldly view. You gotta it seems to pit us against males more
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
that type of upbringing, do it for yourself,
Mm.
it pits
Mm. But Natalie, and you're right, it really does. But I think my perspective on that is that our parents were preparing us for what they went through.
exactly.
And they wanted to make sure that if we had to go through what they went through, that we were okay.
Exactly.
And so with that being said, as you said, our white friends didn't have to go through what our parents went through. Their parents didn't have to go
right.
through what our parents went through. And so it was a cultural thing. But I think the question is, am I allowed
Right. It's
Allowed, that word allowed, to do that. And that's where the question comes in. And that's like Angie said, that is something that she's glad that she gets up and gets to give her contribution to the world, where
right.
some women are oppressed, still living under oppression,
Hmm.
and they're not like Deborah, who got to go out and give her gifts to the world. Um and and I think that's what we're talking about here, more so than what our parents taught us, to be prepared, because ain't nothing wrong with being
No,
prepared
no.
Okay.
at all. They did the right thing by preparing you for what could happen. As Deborah, a Black woman, she had to prepare for the worst, but she still had to do all the stuff that we have to do every day, taking care of our homes, taking care of our families, taking care of our finances, taking care of our husbands, if we have husbands, taking care of all of these things. And she was a judge. And a
Right.
judge wasn't only, in that time, a judge wasn't only judging the community. They were also people that other people looked up to, and who gave spiritual advice, who gave educational advice. They gave all kinds of advice. So there were so many people tugging and pulling at her. Is that how we feel today? Because I can relate to Deborah.
Yeah.
What
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
y'all? Yeah, I can relate to Deborah on that. Because yeah, she did a lot.
God bless you on tonight. We pray that you've been blessed thus far in the Bible is Black History Institute as we are looking at Sister Deborah, Judge Deborah. And the ladies are doing a fantastic job as they are talking about the issues and making the conversation contemporary, because there are a whole lot of women who have a lot in common with Sister Deborah. But what we want to do is have you to hang around after the conversation, because there is a younger group of women who are having the same conversation about Deborah. And we are celebrating Deborah because we found out that Deborah is the first and only judge in Israelite history. And that sort of parallels with what we're doing here this week and what we're celebrating, because we too have our own Deborah. Her name is Kamala Harris. She is the first female vice president in the United States history, and she just so happens to be a sister. And so, whereas the ancient Israelites had their Judge Deborah, we here, African Americans here in the United States, we have our Kamala Harris. And so we're going to have some young women who are having a conversation about Deborah, and they're going to bless us with a bonus right after we conclude the conversation led by our own dynamic Rela Mans. God bless you, and may the Lord continue to keep you.
I just want to kind of sum up the chapter and sum up Deborah for each of you, what you got from reading about Deborah. I've already read the rest of the book, and I got something from each of these ladies, but I just want to go back and talk to you, or hear from you what you got from Deborah, from what she means to you, after reading this chapter.
I wrote that Judge Deborah awakened in me that indeed God is no respecter of persons, like Dr. Williams said.
Hmm.
God uses all people for his glory. Deborah was the only female judge of the 13 judges of Israel. She was respected because she was brave, had integrity, and was determined to do God's calling.
Mm, amen. Cassandra?
Well, Judge Deborah for me was a leader, and she was one who accepted her responsibilities, but she was one who brought out the best in other people
Mm,
also.
yes. Hmm.
And with that, that is the light. And that's what I see that I have been able to do in my life in all of the leadership roles that I've had, because I've worked as a leader and I'm recognized as a leader. Even in my roles at church, I'm
Hmm.
recognized as a leader. And I always want to recognize others. And I have always reached down to pull others up to make sure that they reach their goals. And I've I mean, this is not my first time reading about Deborah, and I aspire to be like Deborah,
Yep.
because Deborah, like I said, she's an awesome warrior, awesome leader, and
Hmm.
she loves those underneath her.
Yep.
So,
That's good. Good. Angela?
Deborah was great. She left legacy. She was this woman of power. She was not going to stand down and let, someone just recognize men in the world. She was determined. She was outspoken, and I find strength in her.
Yeah.
So much strength in her. She was a powerful woman, and I'm happy to be able to discuss Deborah today.
Good. Thank you. So I will go ahead and also sum up what I got from Deborah. I like you ladies, think that Deborah is amazing. She is a woman, as the book says, she is a woman in charge, and I respect her. I look up to her. I feel like she has set the standard as to the woman that I want to be. If I had a daughter, I don't have one, but the young ladies who are in my life, like Angela's daughter and anybody else's daughters that are in my life right now, I will point them directly to Deborah when I have want to use an example of the type of woman that they should be, the type of woman that they should look up to and aspire to be. She was a great leader. She led not only men, but she still, like I said, led her family into greatness. She led other people who, like Sandy said, were underneath her, the other women who were there. And I won't even say underneath her, but I will say under her leadership.
Yes.
She led those women and even those men to be the best that they could be. And that was amazing. And then, like you said, Angela, she would not stand down. I love that about her. She wasn't going to stand down and say, I came up with this, but I'm going to give it to a man for him to take the credit or to present it. No, she did what God instructed her to do. So she was obedient. That's
Yes.
another characteristic of
Yes.
Deborah. She was obedient to what God asked her to do, what he told her to do. This wasn't an ask, it was him
Exactly.
telling her to do. And so she was obedient to him and to his word. She was faithful in what she did. And so I admire her. It isn't my first time reading about her either, but to sit down and dissect her, this was the first time that I really did that. And with that being said, I have a new adoration for Deborah. So for Judge Deborah, let's get it
Judge
right. For
Deborah.
Judge Deborah. So and I just think that, younger women, even than us, um, should look up to her. And I will be, like I said, pushing her to when a young woman comes to me for advice, I'm gonna tell them, read about Deborah. Let's go to the great women of the Bible book and let's talk about Deborah. So
Yes.
thank you, ladies, so much. This has been a pleasure and an honor. I thank you very much. I know, when I called you all, it was not even a thought, for each of you to do this with me. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, I appreciate my pastor, Theron Williams, for allowing us to do this, for calling on me to lead this discussion group. So um, I thank you. Thank you very much. All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you,
Bye.
I'm Kirsten. I'm from New Orleans, but I live in Baton Rouge because I go to LSU and I'm a freshman. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Alexis. I'm from New Orleans as well, but I go to school in Austin, Texas at St. Edward's University, and I am currently a sophomore there.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I am from Dallas, but I also go to school in Austin at St. Edward's, and I'm a junior there.
Cool. Okay, in the book, it is said that at the time, Hebrew culture was a little bit sexist, and like women's values were based off of like the men in their lives, and also like how many like children they had, and that like sometimes like if they were like sick or something, or if something bad happened, then it was like probably a punishment. And Judge Deborah was a judge as well as a leader, and she led a military through a war, and the outcome was they won, of course. But basically it seems like the author is like saying how women can be used in higher positions. Some things, or maybe like a good amount of things, can't just be like considered to be like men's work. Like a woman can do it too. Sometimes a woman can do it better. That, at least that's what I'm getting. When God uses people, he doesn't like just use like a specific person, like he can use everybody or anybody. So like usually like in the Bible, like we see like a lot of leaders, or at least the majority of people in the Bible are men. And like even like as a little girl, I was like, well, like where's the girls at? Um, like where they at? Because I was like, I don't see anybody who's like me. So like when I read like this chapter of the book, I was like, this is like really interesting, and it really like made me like think. I was like, well, like how many other women in the Bible like also had like these big positions and stuff.
I agree about you, like with you talking about like women in the Bible and like just leadership positions and like how it's not really talked about, because it's very much a thing. Like I didn't even know who Judge Deborah was. Like I didn't even know that was something that had happened. And I think it's also interesting to point out like God doesn't just use one person as well. Like you were saying, like he so almost always uses like multiple people, or like he'll use everybody in their own like special way, and like it'll come together for something greater. And I think that's something that's very important to point out. Like there's no way like there's just all these like men in power or whatever, and they didn't have, and like they were married and had wives and stuff, like the women also didn't have like a role or like contribute something. And I think it's very important to also recognize that like women bring something different to the table. Like we can bring different perspectives and just like different outlooks, and like men may not think about, they may not understand or get. So I think it's also it's good that like we're highlighting these stories of like women in the Bible, and we're highlighting how like we can be leaders, and we can also do things that men do, even if it's like maybe in a different manner, it's like unorthodox to society or whatever. Like there's something that we contribute, like God can use us, like we can be a vessel as well, because a lot of the time when God uses one person, like that's a blessing a community, or like that's a blessing like a family or whatever. Like if he's using your wife, like that's gonna bless you too, and like vice versa. So it's it's very nice that like these stories are being highlighted, especially like with like Judge Deborah like, being like a judge and a military leader and stuff like that. That's some like, you know, woo, like that's some good like status, like bad stuff. Like she was a baddie. So yeah, I think it's really good that we're bringing attention to this.
Yeah, I agree with both of y'all, especially about like the part about not many women being highlighted in the Bible, and even like the few that are, like I feel like there's more women in the Bible that people like, the women people are more familiar with in the Bible tend to be like negative. So like Samson and Delilah, like Delilah was the one who seduced Samson and like ruined his life basically. Or like Jezebel, and like it's like you still call people Jezebels, you know? So it's like the women in the Bible that people tend to highlight, they're highlighting them for the wrong reasons, as if that means that women like aren't aren't fit to be used by God, or like, you know, the enemy's got them, or like both of y'all were saying, like women can do, you know, everything or many things, and sometimes even better. So it's really like empowering to see like a woman like Deborah in the Bible who, you know, was like listening to God's voice, and was obedient and was humble and was like used in so many ways that people probably didn't even think God could use a woman in.
So I'm going to start with question 6. It says, what has been your experience, if any, as a woman leader in a male-dominated industry?
What don't you experience, really? Like, honesty. Like there's just so much that can happen. I know right now I'm in a leadership position with BSA, and it's funny because the president's a male, but everyone working, I want to say working under him, but like everyone else on the team is a female. So it's really interesting to see those power dynamics, especially like just relaying information and stuff. I'm trying to think what else. I have always had like really strong women and women in leadership positions and roles in my life as examples. But I do know, like hearing stories from my sister or like my mom and stuff, like what does and can happen in a male-dominated industry if you're working like in the business or at a firm or whatever. And it's very scary to think, like it definitely makes me scared to when I like go out into the workforce or whatever, like if I want to work in a male dominated field, which like I'm looking into law and like politics and stuff, which obviously is a male dominated field, and a white male dominated field, which I think is also important to highlight those intersectionalities. But it's a lot you got to deal with. You got to deal with sexism, and you have to work harder, and especially as a Black woman, you have to work harder because of stereotypes, and there could be just harassment or assault or just other things, and it's a lot to have to think about, even if you like aren't like, we're young, like we don't have like a career or anything right now, but it's like just thinking about like the future is definitely something that like I know I take into consideration. Like if I were to ever be like in my job, like in a place where I've worked for a while, like in my career or whatever, and I have to deal with like a coworker or like a boss or something, like trying to like I don't know, be like sexist or dominant or like just like step out of line. I'd be thinking, I'm like, I would, because I'm not the type of person to like keep that stuff hush hush. I would definitely be like, I'm calling corporate, like I'm gonna do something about it. But also, you have to realize, like a lot of times, women also aren't like they're not believed. Like they don't, people demonize them. And kind of like what Kelsey was saying, like even the women we know in the Bible, like we hear about, it's like they're not in the good light. Like you hear about, so-called people Jezebels and Samson and Delilah and like everything. It's like, it's just a connotation, I think, that like women have like an inherent like deceit that comes with them, or like they're trying to like there's some reason like why we wouldn't want to tell the truth, or like we're trying to cause attention or drama or whatever. So like that's definitely something I take into consideration. Like if I were to go to have a job and like something were to happen and I would be like, oh, this happened to me, would they even believe me? So it's definitely like a lot to even have to take into consideration about like going into the workforce, like working in male dominant like positions.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Alexis said. I work in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion at our school, and kind of like Alexis, like my boss is a man, but everybody else is like a woman. So it's like there's that power dynamic there already. And like you really have to like pick your battles, which sucks because like we should be able to like if something goes wrong, we should be able to say it, and feel like we're going to be taken care of. But like women, like you're pushed under the rug, or you're being too sensitive, or you're being dramatic, or you're letting your emotions control you. And like Alexa said, like, and then we're Black women, so there's like a whole nother like layers of like if you get angry, then you're really just you're just completely gone. But like yeah, I also like I host a Bible study with like some of my friends, and I remember my dad, he's a pastor, and he was telling me, there's some people out there who say like women can't preach, like women are not supposed to preach, like women need to stay in like a woman's place or whatever. And it's just amazing because it's like if God tells me that I need to, if I'm supposed to be ministering to my friends, and I feel like that's something that God told me to do, like how are you going to tell me that I can't do it because I'm a woman, So it's just amazing because it's like you have to work so much harder, like Alexis was saying. And then again, like with your race, like adding a whole nother layer to like an already difficult field.
I personally haven't really had like much experience, at least not that I can currently think of, but something that definitely popped up in my mind, like if y'all know me, like A Different World is my favorite show. I love that show. And it reminded me of when Whitley was working with the art exhibits and with the art people, and the guy was sexually harassing her. And when she went to say something, they're like, oh, no, you're being too sensitive, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't just her, it's like other people too. And so when they went and brought it to court, nothing happened. And that just like made me think, like, if I were in that position, like, I know for a fact I would be scared because, like, I'm a girl, and most businesses and industries are run by males. So, and I'm already like, I'm already partially uncomfortable around males anyway, so I don't know like how that would affect me, but I know like so much of this happens like every day, and it's really scary. So like I'm saying that to say, um, I I feel like I feel like it would be nice to like be able to like be a woman who is leading in like a male dominated industry, like for example the film industry. Like most producers and film writers are male, and you don't get a lot of like female film people. So yeah, it's very interesting, I will say that.
I
um
think that's interesting. I think it's a good point that you say, like, if I were, like, I would just want to be the leader in that industry or whatever. Because I think about people like Shonda Rhimes or whatever, who's like an executive producer and like has her own, like, does her own thing with film and everything. Like, she's the head of that. And just like, it makes you just think, like, if I were, I don't want to work under anyone. Like, I just want to be the leader. So I don't have to deal with it. Like, I'm the boss. Like, you come to me. Like, I just, it definitely, like, makes you want to shift your, like, perspective and mentality and just want to be on top so you don't have to deal with like all the extra stuff, Like it just makes you want to be like, you know what? Since clearly I don't want to deal with it, why don't I just be the big dog? Like just switch the narrative, which clearly happened with, Deborah. Homegirl said, I'm the captain now. But yeah.
Yeah, and like even the women you see in TV, like I forget what it's called. I think it's like the Belker test or something. And it's like you watch a movie and you have to see if like there's two women in the movie at least two women in the movie who have a conversation with each other and it's not about men or it's not about love or whatever. And it's like, how often do you really see that? Like, how often do you see something with a female lead or whatever that doesn't revolve around a love interest or doesn't revolve around, her emotionality, where she's just, like out here doing things, Like how often do we even see that, let alone get the chance to do that?
Discuss 5 characteristics about Deborah that made her a great leader. Do you see some of these characteristics in yourself? How might you develop them? I'm gonna say 3 because one characteristic that I saw in Deborah was like confidence. Like I know like if I were in that position, I would be scared. I'd be like, why are you telling me to lead all these people? You could call somebody else, find somebody else. But Deborah, like, she took up that challenge and she was like, I got this. Like, I'm gonna lead these people and they are going to follow me. And she did what she had to do. Another one would definitely be, bravery and confidence is kind of like the same thing a little bit. But I'm gonna say bravery anyway. She was brave because, like we just said, the majority of people in the Bible were male. So, like, in order for her to, like, be able to, like, do what she has to do, especially, like, when there's a bunch of male leaders around her, and she's the only female leader or one of the few female leaders, that had to take a lot of guts. Yeah, definitely brave. And I would also say organized, because I feel like in order to be like a judge and a leader and like, shoot, you have to lead people into battle and do all this other stuff, you have to be organized. I definitely need to work on my organization. I will say that.
I think one of the characteristics I saw the most is obedience, and like just like obedience to God, because they were saying how like most of the time, like there was like no like structure or whatever, like to have a judge or whatever. Like they were saying most of the time judges are like anointed like by God, or it's like people who like have a word like from God or whatever. It's like basically like God chooses the judges. Like it wasn't a thing of like we do, like we had like inaugurations and like elections and stuff. Like it was none of that. And so I think for her to like get a word, and like Kirsten was saying, like, if God were to come and tell me like you need to lead all these people, like like we often like time like as just humans, like we have doubt, or like really, you sure God, like me, like it reminds me of them. I don't know if y'all seen this tweet, but it was like I've been going through a lot of struggles lately, and I don't know God, but I'm not your strongest soldier, like I'm not the one. And it reminds me of that, like how we always like question like God's plans or whatever, but it's like, you know, if we are obedient and just listen and trust, like he will provide everything we need. And I think that's definitely something like I know I like can work on, and like I try to work on and be intentional about, but it's like very hard because between like, you know, the anxiety and like no, God, like, you know, I'm in school, like I'm doing all this other stuff, like you sure like right now, like it's the time, like it's just like I have a lot of questions. I'm definitely a person who likes to have like a plan and structure and know what's going on. So it's definitely a thing of like having to step out on faith for certain things, like just be obedient and like entrusting God's plan and being like, okay, maybe this isn't the season for that, or like maybe I should listen to this more, like really trying to be like in tune with God's word, because also in order to be obedient, that means you have to make yourself available to listen and actually like hear from God. And clearly like that had to be going on for, you know, my good sis Deborah to be like a judge and a full-on leader and like, you know, take these positions in a very sexist society. So I think, and like that, and that's another thing, is like his plans can also be like greater than we imagine. Like she had like all the odds of society and like stigmas and everything against her, and you know, had her role set like that's not what you're supposed to be doing, but she listened to God and literally became like a judge and a military leader and like did all this stuff that was like nowhere supposed to be like in her, you know, in her role as a woman in society. So it's like it just shows like when you're obedient and you listen, like God will handle the rest of it and like open all these doors that we probably can't even like fathom. So obedience will be the other characteristic.
Yeah, I have one more, and then I think we'll have, was it 5? Okay, bet. I was gonna say humble. And I know like I've had this conversation a few times, but it's like a lot of the times when we say humble, we think people who like think low of themselves, but really like humility is like taking up the exact amount of space that God has given you. And like that's exactly what she did. Like she was, like Alexis said, she was obedient. Like Kirsten said, she was like strong and confident, and she did what she needed to do, you know, and she wasn't like glorifying in herself because of it. Like she was giving glory to God, because like when God is using you and it's on a big scale, like you really have to watch your ego and like watch how you feel, because you could start feeling like, oh, well, I'm doing this, you know. But it's like in the whole story, like she was obedient to God, and she like took up the exact amount of space that God wanted her to in what she was doing.
Oh, I want to read this paragraph really quickly. It says, the Lord spoke to Deborah, giving her the strategy to defeat the oppressor to win their freedom. After spending time with God, receiving divine guidance, she began to put the divine plan into action. Deborah summoned Barak, the commander of Israel's inferior army, and advised him of the action plan God had revealed to her. The strategy required Barak to recruit 10,000 Israelite troops from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and position them at Mount Tabor. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the names. I'm trying my very best. The Lord then promised to draw out Sisera to meet them by the Wadi Kishon. There the Lord would give them victory. Barak agreed with the plan under the condition that Deborah accompany him to the battle. Deborah had so much faith in God's plan that she gladly complied with Barak's condition, and she cautioned him, however, that the community would not give them the credit for the victory, but that they would give it to her. So with that being said, how did Barak show Deborah respect?
I mean, like he wanted her to come with him like on the journey. Like he wasn't trying to like take over or anything. Like he recognized like the position that God had placed her in, and you know, he respected that, and he wasn't trying to change any of that, and he like listened to her and he trusted her, you know, and that like takes a lot, because sometimes it's difficult. Like if you're not able to see what God has told somebody else, it can be difficult to go along with it. But like he really you know, he heeded to what he allowed God to use her, and he didn't try to like get in the way of that.
I like that. That's a good point when you were like, sometimes it can be hard to like listen to other people, like, or listen to what God has told other people, and like when they tell it to you, because I feel like sometimes we even feel like when God speaks to us and like, dang, like really, that's kind of crazy. So to tell someone else and then have them believe you, that's a new level, I feel like, of trust and like confidence that you have, like not only in like that person, but also like in God and his plan. So I think like that's a great level of respect you can show someone to like have like to be able to trust them and or believe them and like God told me this and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna believe with you and I'm gonna be with you. Like I feel like that's something that's like very like that shows a lot of like reverence and respect. And I think that's like a good point. I didn't like I like that. I like that point, Kelsey. I've never that I like that. Yeah.
Girl, I like had to get that like from my own experience because there's been times where God has told me stuff and I'm like, what? And then I tell somebody else and they're like, what? You know? And then like on the same end, like there's been times where people have confided into me like stuff that God has told them. And it's like, so we're not only having faith for what God's told us, but we're also having faith for what he's told other people. And that's even more difficult because we don't hear that, you know, we don't see that. So we really just have to trust that like God is gonna, you know, he's sovereign regardless, you know, and respecting like what people, you know, what God is telling other people and what they tell you, like respecting that it's important, you know. And it's difficult because again, like faith, like you don't see it, you know, and it's like I already like don't see it in my life, so how am I gonna see it in yours?
Somebody else's.
Yeah, but like it's like I really admired that like while reading it because it's like wow, like you really were trusting like.
So I know that this one is under questions for men, but I thought this question was really interesting, so I would really like to ask. Do you think do you think the Israelites trusted Deborah as a military leader? If not, why? And would you trust a Black woman as the commander-in-chief of the country that you live in?
I like that question. Do I think the Israelites trusted Deborah as a leader? I feel like it probably would have been mixed reactions because I don't think probably everyone was on board. There was probably definitely some people who doubted it, or some people were like, man, why is this like woman leading us? Or like this shouldn't be like this is not how things are supposed to work. Then they probably had some people who were, you know, like, you know what? Maybe she's talking about something. Maybe this is God. So I feel like it probably was mixed. But also I also feel like men have stronger influence from other men than they do women. Like I feel like men can influence each other a lot more than other women or like other people can. Like I don't know, they just influence each other like I like monkey see monkey do. So I think so I really think like I feel like if there was like a larger group of men who didn't believe, then well, you know. But do I think they had respect? What's the other the do they or would I trust a Black woman to lead the military of my country? Is that the other question? This might be biased, but yeah. Like I mean, absolutely. I think it's proven it's like it's proven that women are better leaders because we're more organized and like more thoughtful, and we tend to be better communicators. So I think being in the leadership role as big as like leading in the military will take a lot of organization and, you know, communication and stuff, which we're already like good at. So I think it would probably be a lot better if women were to lead a military. Like I don't know, it just makes sense to me naturally. Like I don't see why it would be a problem. But again, you know, that might be biased as a Black woman. Like I don't like I would definitely trust a Black woman to lead, you know, to lead the country, to lead the military of the country. I feel like things would probably go smoother as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with Alexis. I also would trust a Black woman. It makes sense. And also like Black women have to deal with like adversity because of their gender, because of their race. So it's like they also have a better understanding of what it's like to be in a marginalized group. So they're able to like take care of everybody and, you know, be more thoughtful regarding like their own biases and like what other groups of people aren't getting. And then like I also think there was a mixed reaction. The book was talking about how like people were still like pleading with God to like help them with the military, even though like all of the judges, like God placed them where they were, and he kept the people as long as the judges were alive. So it's like they were fine because God ordained Deborah, but they still were like, but God, like, help us, even though he had literally already brought them somebody, which, I mean, that's how it was. Like, that just shows like how it was at the time. And sometimes it still is like that. Like, sometimes we'd be like, God help us, and he's already given us something or someone. But yeah.
I agree with the both of you. I also feel like the Israelites definitely did have a mixed reaction. So you know, everything is split in two. But but I definitely would trust a Black woman to be in a position of power, because like Kelsey said, like, Black women are strong, and like they've also been wait, I'm trying to think of how you said it. They've also been in like a position, like they care for people. Yeah, like they care for people, and they're really good at it. And I also feel like another thing that I think is also like something that I think about, like usually when I think about Black women, it's like Black women are the smartest race and gender. And I definitely feel like they would be perfect to lead in a position of power, because they know what they're doing. Like, you know, like, you remember that picture of that lady and she's standing in front of the police officers? That's what I think of. That is what I think of. So yes. Yes. So that's what I have to say. If you have men under your leadership in any area, describe your experience.
Ooh, I actually have a story. I don't know if this technically like counts as like leadership, but I was in a group. I've switched my major like a whole bunch of times. Let me just preface by saying that. So this is at a time where I'm majoring in like social work now, but this was when I was majoring in like digital media management, and I had to take a marketing class. And I was placed in this group with this guy, and he was like on the basketball team, and he just had like this real big ego. Like, he felt real important, but he had this real big ego, and he just didn't want to do any of the work. And it got to the point where like nobody was really like stepping up to the plate of like organizing everything. And it's like the guys, there were two guys in the group, but the other one didn't really like do too much. But it's like they felt like they were already in charge, even though they never talked about anything. So then it got to the point where I was like, okay, y'all, like, we need to get started on this project. What time are we meeting? What time are we doing this? Da 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 da. And I was really trying to like get it together. And they like they were like, okay, fine, like we can meet at this time. They never came. Neither of the guys came. And it's like we scheduled like individual meetings with each other, and then we scheduled like meetings with the whole group, and they never came to any of them. And so it's like then they're texting me like the night before the project's due. And it was just really frustrating because it felt like they wanted to be like the authoritative figure, but they didn't do the work. And then whenever I did step up to the plate and was ready to do the work, they got upset that I was like being authoritative towards them. And it was just like I could tell, like, there were a few times, the very few times that I got to see them, like I only saw them in class because they never came to any of the meetings. And anytime they saw me, like the way that they would look, they'd just be like, and you could just tell like they were not in it, like they were not like, it was disrespectful, low key. But yeah, that was my experience. It was just like they didn't respect the fact that like we were trying to get the work done, because it was a group of 4. There was me, another girl, and then there were 2 guys. And it's like me and the girl, like we worked really well together, but the guys just were not like cooperating. And they would like they tried to like step up to the plate, and we were like, okay, cool. And then they just like didn't deliver and didn't do anything. And so like when we stepped to the plate, like then they got upset that we were like telling them what to do. But yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, kind of similar to Kelsey. Like, I can't think of like one. Like, I mean, like I've been in leadership positions, but like it hasn't been like me like over like a man or anything, or like where I'm like supposed to be like ahead of them. But I mean, kind of like in high school, I think about this like a lot from like high school though, but it's like when we were like kind of like Kelsey was saying, like we would work in groups and like you'll be in the group, like you'll be the only girl in the group and it's like a group full of guys or whatever, and like you're the only one trying to like initiate the work and like trying to like encourage them like, hey, like we should do this paper, like we should get this project going, or like answer these questions, and they would just be sitting there and just looking, or like be like you can tell like they were aggravated that you were actually trying to work, like we're not in school. And it's definitely like weird because in like the last minute or whatever, like, oh, they want to step up and act like they're actually doing the work, or like it's time to present and they want to take over the PowerPoint that you worked on, or they want to write, or like they want to act like they had a role in this stuff, and like they contributed and pulled their weight, and they didn't. And I feel like it's a lot of that way. A lot of time, like there's a lot of women in the backgrounds. Right. No, for real. And it's like I feel like a lot of times like it's like that in a lot of things where a woman will be like in the back, like doing the work, like pushing things along, like making sure things run smoothly, or like making sure things are ready to produce and be put out. And then the men get to take their credit for it, or like they're at the forefront presenting it, or whatever it may be, like in just different scenarios. Like I feel like a lot of times women in the backgrounds that are pushing things along with businesses or whatever, like making sure everything is in order. So when push comes to shove and it's time to actually, do what needs to be done, things are smooth, and it's because it's a woman. But anyway, yeah, boys, it's like it's weird. I feel like it's definitely like a thing of like they get aggravated or annoyed when you try to like actually like I don't know, speak to them and like try to like do what you're supposed to be doing. Like I don't know. It's like they feel like you're the teacher or something. Like you're like actually trying to like I don't know. It's definitely a thing. It's like they don't say anything disrespectful, but it's definitely like an energy you feel where it's like like they're bothered by you, or like they don't like that you're like taking up space. And that's what I don't like, because like you may not be saying anything to my face, but I could definitely feel like that you don't like that I'm speaking right now, like that I'm actually trying to get work done, or I'm actually trying to like contribute to the group. Like I could definitely tell. So yeah.
And it's like an ego thing. Like it's like they do not want to be told what to do by a girl. And like Alexis was saying, then they like want to take credit for all the work. Like what?
I know for me, again, I really haven't had any experiences, but something I have noticed is like I had like a lot of female teachers, and I remember like one specific teacher that I had, and her name was Miss Lee, and she was always like trying to get the guys to do their work, and the class was full of guys. There were only like 3 or 4 of us girls. The class was full of guys. They wouldn't do their work. But then they would come up to her and complain, if I don't get this done, I'm not going to be able to play basketball, or I'm not going to be able to be on the football team, and blah, blah, blah. And she'd be like, well, that's your fault. And then they're like, no, but you should have taught me this. What were you doing in class? What were you doing in class? Because it wasn't your work. You didn't take notes. You didn't study. You didn't pass the tests. So whose fault is that? But that's what that reminded me of. So, yes.
They get mad at the teacher for giving them the grade that they deserved. Like that.
Yeah.
I hate. Oh,
you should have taught us this. She did.
I hated that. Or let me talk to somebody about the teacher outside of class, and I'm like, and then they act like you can relate. Be like, man, don't you just hate Miss So and So or whatever? Or like, oh man, like I don't like that she does X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, honey, I'm doing fine in that class. I don't know what you're talking about, but it's.
And then it's like they get away with disrespecting the teacher too, because like if a girl did all that, it's over. But like guys can just get away with it.
Or like the dudes in their friend groups or whatever, it'd be like the whole friend group, like tagging the teacher, talking about her, like just like being like rude and disrespectful and stuff during class. It's like, what? Like it's just so crazy to me. It's like they really do not like to be told about themselves, but then get upset when things don't turn out in their favor. Like they feel like they're like you said, like it's a pride thing, or like an entitlement thing. Like they deserve to like get a good grade in that class. Like they deserve to be taught in whatever way, like they get mad when the teacher tells them about themselves. Like what?
Okay, so one more question. This is the last one. But it is also from the questions for men, but I also really found this one super duper interesting. So it says, have you ever worked for a woman? If so, was it different from working for a man, and how so?
I love working for women. Let me just say that. The first job I ever had, most of the managers were women. I used to work at Panera Bread, and most of the managers were women, and they were the best people. Like they got the work done. They, like they communicated. They made sure everybody was like on the right track. Like they were really, and then like if you got close enough to them, like they'd like be like your friend, but still like maintaining like the work relationship. And it was really great. Like Panera is a perfect example because it's like that was the women, but whenever the men were there, like I'd be doing manager jobs. Like I'm like, why am I doing this? This is your job. Or like they would send the schedule and I would have a shift the day they send the schedule, but I wouldn't know until then. Or like just other stuff, just not really communicating, would stay in the office the entire day and then just choose some random people to be doing like jobs that were meant for them. Like I remember I used to have to do inventory and like all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is not my job. Like I'm getting paid minimum wage. Like, why am I doing this? But I've noticed that like whenever you work for men, they kind of expect you to pick up like their slack. But whenever you work for women, like at least in my experience, they tend to like take their work more seriously, and take your work seriously as well. And like they value like your time and your energy, and they're not expecting you to like pick up their slack. And they like, well, again, like they will communicate with you, they will tell you like what you need to do, and they'll be like cordial or whatever. And it's probably because like women know what it's like to have to pick up other people's slack, and like to deal with men who like are including them in conversations or who don't take them seriously. So like I've noticed like the women that I've worked for, like they take their jobs like very seriously, um and like they take their employees very seriously too.
That's a good point. I think I would definitely prefer working for a woman. The one I had a summer job like after high school, and I worked in a courthouse. And the chamber that I worked for, or like the chamber, the judge's chamber I worked in, it was all women. It was all women. It was all black women. And there was this one white dude, but it was over the summertime, like they were like on recess or whatever. So like they weren't like in the office or anything. Like it was just basically like us, like the interns, like they're maintaining it, like if they got mail or like someone came in the office, whatever, relaying the message. Like simple stuff. But like there was like it was mainly like black women who worked in the chamber. And so I remember there was this one day, like this man from a completely different chamber, different judge, he came in and was like, and me and the other dude who were working there, they were like, y'all could like, do your work on your computer, play your phone. We don't care. Like, you just like there was nothing to do. It was the summertime. Like they weren't there. And so like we were in there one day, and like we were on like we were just there like on our computer and like reading books on our phone, whatever, like just minding our business really. So the dude came in there and he was like, I'm looking for Judge so and so, and we're like, oh, like she's not in here, like we couldn't tell her a message. And he was like, oh, what are you doing, like shopping online, like what are you like, oh, just all up in our business, but well, not even our business, and my business, because I was sitting at the table, so when he walked in, like he could see like my computer screen and stuff. And so he was like, oh, like are you shopping online, like you like this is what y'all are doing, like you're supposed to be in here, and this is what y'all are doing, like whatever, like just. And it was a white man. We were two black kids, not kids, but like we were both black. And so he was like, he just like had this like arrogance about him, like he was just like so like just like I don't know, like he just was like disapproving what we were doing with our time, even though the judge we're working for knew what we were doing. and everyone else knew were like they were fine with it. And so I told the judge I was working for about it, also who just happened to be my godmother, but we don't have to talk about that. And I was like, this man came in and was like, just like had this air about him. Like it was just so weird to me, like how I'm not working for you. You're a whole nother judge. You're in the whole nother part of the courthouse, and like you want to come in here and say like what we shouldn't be doing at our job. And it was just like so weird to me. And she was so mad. She was like, she was just so mad. She's like, I'm gonna tell him about himself and he's gonna be hearing from me and worry about what you're doing and all this stuff. And but it was just like, I'm like, how are you gonna come in here and like I don't work for you, I don't even know you, sir, and tell me about what we should be doing? Like I don't know, it was just like I feel like men just have this just like this entitlement, like Kelsey was saying, like they just expect things from you and they don't make it, like they just expect you to do certain things, like you should maintain the certain like comfortability. Like I don't know, like it's definitely, I feel like it's an entitlement thing, and I would love to like work for women. I feel like that, like Kelsey was saying about the communicators, they're more respectful. I feel like they can understand. Like I don't have to worry about like getting harassed by a woman or like a woman disrespecting me or like someone believing me. If I said like something happened, like I don't know, it's just like a lot less. I feel like I will have to worry about like working for a woman versus like a man. And yeah, it's interesting because I know some people, like my mom, like feels the opposite way. She was like, I hate working for women because she feels like women, if it's like women can get jealous and stuff too. But I also feel like I'd rather deal with like jealousy or something than like harassment. So I don't know. It's just I don't know. Like I know some women, because my sister, I feel like I think my sister's the same way. Like she'd rather like work for a man or whatever, because she doesn't like women who are leadership above her. Like she finds that they tend to be like more like jealous, or she finds that like they put more work on her, like there's like missteps, like they report or whatever. So I don't know, there's definitely some women who don't feel that way, but like for me, I would definitely want to work for a woman. Just saying.
I know for me, when I had my job, I worked for a group of women, and we had one guy who was there, and the women were like really like, there were certain things that they would have planned out for your day, so you wouldn't just be sitting there. And when he got there, they were like, oh well, here's what we're gonna want you to do. And this man came in and he was like, I'm gonna take him with me. And we noticed like the kid didn't have anything to do. Like there was no set out schedule. He would either be sitting in the room by himself on his phone, or like one time out of the whole day, the man would be like, hey, I need you to shred this paper, and that would be it. So like something I realized is like, it seems like women are a lot more organized, but I also feel like there are some men who like actually like do know what they want you to do. Like there was another job I had like a few years ago, and it was more like the man had a set out schedule, and the woman actually didn't really have a set out schedule. So I feel like it just depends on the person, but I feel like I think I would be okay working for whoever. It just depends on like what you have planned and like how you treat me. Thank y'all both for coming and discussing. Oh wow, discussing. I am so sorry. And discussing and discussing the chapter. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry it took me like so long to like figure it out, but I really appreciate y'all taking out your time out of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for this contemporary conversation about Judge Deborah, one of the great women of the Bible. Tune in next Tuesday at 7 p.m. as the Bible is Black History Institute 2021 continues our conversation with Mary Magdalene. God bless and have a blessed week.